Okay. Good evening. Welcome to the latest installment of Building the Scottish State. And I have the great pleasure to have with me Mr. Geoff Bush with me, who is the founder of SNP Members for Independence. And so we've also been mutually cooperating on developing the Manifesto for Indy, which we hope to get the support of the pro-independence parties, and hopefully, if successful, this would deliver independence in the elections in May. So, first of all, Geoff, thank you for being with us this evening.
It's very good to be here, Mark. Thank you.
Great. So let's just begin by, if you could talk a little bit about your involvement in the SNP over the years, kind of the relationships that you've developed, and then also why you decided to form SNP Members for Independence.
Okay. I am a relatively recent member of the SNP. I worked in the Yes campaign in 2014. I wakened up in the morning of January the 1st, 2014, and had this vision of losing the referendum in September, and I hadn't done anything. Mm-hmm. So I contacted our local Yes folks in Perth, and was an active member of the campaign all the way through to the 18th of September, at which point I was chatting with the local SNP convener, and he said, well, are you going to think about joining the SNP? And I said, the only way I'm going to join the SNP is if we lose. And so I joined the next day.
Yeah.
The first new member in Perth River Tay branch, and just thought, well, I don't remember, became branch organizer fairly quickly after that. Mm-hmm. Worked in, the usual sort of stuff that you work in: elections, council elections, all the rest of it, just doing the normal kind of street stalls, what have you, and organising leaflet deliveries and organising various things, and thoroughly enjoyed it, and mostly liked speaking with people about independence. So I kept on as a member of that. I moved away from Perth a couple of times in the meantime. Briefly joined branches in Edinburgh and Inverness. Mm-hmm. Went back to the Perth branch. I'm now a member of the branch here in Girvan, mm-hmm, in South Ayrshire. But I only moved there about a month ago. Mm-hmm. So and then moving forwards to, I was involved because I didn't have a full-time job. I was retired, so I was able to devote quite a lot of time to church industry.
What was your former employment?
I managed a number of businesses. I was involved in and managed a number of businesses from around about 1990 onwards, in areas as diverse as software development, natural cosmetics, sonar, various things like that. Not a terribly uniform group of things. And I still have a small self-catering business that I kind of run.
Okay.
Based in the
West. Right. And since then, you've, and what were your expectations on the 19th of September, or after the referendum was lost? I was there, and I had this feeling of it's not over yet, and I just thought it would be just a few years before independence was achieved. I kind of felt it in my bones, and so I've kept at it just as you have. But how did you feel after the referendum was?
Oh, well, absolutely depressed for about a day, mm-hmm, and then thought, right, this is not a job, this is a purpose.
Yeah, right.
And thought, well, okay, I'm getting on a bit, so I'm going to devote as much of my time as I can to working for independence. Mm-hmm. and had no desire at all to be. I mean, I have a number of pals who are councillors and, for that matter, MSPs and MPs. But I have no desire at all to have any sort of elected office. It's I'm quite used to with the small companies that I've been involved in. I'm quite used to doing my own thing, being my own boss, reporting to the market, as it were.
Yeah.
The idea of working in a local authority. I admire the people that can do it. It would drive me insane. It's my idea of hell.
Okay.
I just couldn't do it. Any sort of elected office.
And so beyond, what have you done beyond your involvement in kind of local SNP politics? Have you attended many of the conferences?
I've attended pretty much every conference. Yeah,
I did too.
And take quite an interest in policy and in how the party is run and all the rest of it. And I guess moving on to your kind of second question about setting up SNP members for independence, which, if you look at that as the title of a would-be group of people, it's a little bit, what's the word? It's tautological, isn't it?
One would think, you would think that, of course, all members. But so what did you mean when you wanted to distinguish the SNP from?
Well, what do you think? I think this was, I actually got set up in September. Been thinking about it for a little while before that. I was getting very frustrated about the way the party.
Yeah, tell me about your motivations and your frustrations. And I can guess a lot of them, but go ahead and explain.
Yeah. This could take a whole hour. But I thought, well, I'm really frustrated with the way that the party was going. To my mind, and it was very much about an interest organisation, absolutely classic interest mechanism, very well executed.
What do you mean by interest? I don't quite understand.
Well, I mean a group of, in the case of the SNP, an organised group of people who were using the party as a means to an end, who did not have the party's prime goal as their prime goal.
Yeah.
And that I've not really got too much to say about transactivism. I haven't got a view on it either way. What I do have a view about is the fact that a transactive clique group had hijacked my party. And that displeased me enormously. I would have been equally displeased if it had been, deep sea divers for the union. It didn't actually matter. What mattered was the fact that they'd stolen the party. And it was very clear that that had, in terms...
You're referring to the current leadership, of course.
I'm not referring particularly to the current leadership. I mean the group of... the trans group within the SNP has hijacked the party. I had a discussion with this almost just over a year ago after a constituency association meeting. I had a conversation with an MSP there, who is still an MSP, and I more or less said, look, I think it's disgraceful the way that this has happened. And he was absolutely in agreement and absolutely enraged that this has happened.
Can you explain a little bit about what exactly this is?
If you can, nothing about it.
Yeah. If you can boil in a nutshell what's happened. I mean, I see these headlines, I see, stories about it kind of referring to it, but how would you, if you could put it in a nutshell, what's happened with the trans issue?
I think what's happened is that this particular group has got into positions of some power at all sorts of levels within the party, and is essentially dictating policy. So if you look at the composition of the NEC, for example, before the elections last November, then it was many of the people in the NEC were, I don't know how to describe it. Woke is a really bad term because it's got deeper meaning than that. But let's just call them the woke element within the party. Mm-hmm. Had essentially taken over the main decision-making body of the party, mm-hmm. and turned it into not a democracy, but what's the word? An autocracy. Yeah. It's very clear that the key policy-making body of the party, in other words, the party conference, has been disabled. Mm-hmm. Conference no longer makes policy. The NEC makes policy, and not always, I hear, in a democratic fashion. Mm-hmm. In any case, mm-hmm. So that's what I think has happened with the party. Mm-hmm. Now you've got a couple of options. If you think that the party should be about independence rather than about GRA or hate crime bill, you've got a couple of options. You can either say, well, this party's no longer the party for me, I'm going to leave. Mm-hmm. Or you can say, well, look, let's do something about it. Mm-hmm. And let's see if we can't establish a group of party members who want to stay in the party, mm-hmm. who are loyal to the party's original principles, mm-hmm. independence number one, and see what we can do about it. Mm-hmm. And well, I thought, okay, let's just set this Facebook group up and see what happens. Mm-hmm. I'd never done anything like that. I'd never run a Facebook group before, but and I got quite a bit.
I'm sure you've never created a dissident faction within a party. So.
Not really, no. But somebody needed to do it.
Yeah, right. If you don't, who will? Exactly.
Yeah, well, exactly. So anyway, put it together and decided that it should be in the form of a Facebook group, mm-hmm. but a private Facebook group, mm-hmm. so that the membership was comprised only of SNP members, mm-hmm. Because we wanted to have input. We want to have input to SNP policy, and you can't kind of credibly do that if there are, if there are non-SNP members in the.
Exactly, because I remember originally I tried to sign up too because I had been in SNP membership, but you couldn't accept me because I lived abroad and I was no longer a member. I said that's no problem. Yeah, yeah. That was my first interaction with you. So.
Yeah. That was, did I say? Did I? We refused, myself and my kind of co-admin Andrew Sinclair.
It was perfectly valid, but you said, look, you asked me, are you a party member? I said, well, I was, but it was only go to conference. I'm in France, You said, I can't accept it. It's no problem. Yeah. I had no issue.
You see, it was a real rigorous.
No, exactly. No, it showed your rigor. It's not,
to be honest, it was, we did it. We have actually refused quite a few people, obviously. And, quite a few people quite innocently, like yourself, mm-hmm. applied to be members, but also quite a few people just lied about their membership. So we had kind of backdoor ways of really kind of checking people out. Mm-hmm. Not doing anything illegal, immoral, or anything like that. Mm-hmm. But quite a few people. It was interesting the number of people who did join, and who said, "Oh, thank goodness this group's been set up." I was about to leave the party, so we actually saved some people.
Yeah.
We actually saved some people from.
And how many members did you get on your Facebook, or what's the current level of members?
It's about 1,200. It's between 1,100 and 1,200.
Not bad. Yeah.
And to be honest, we're not really trying to increase that. That we get a bit of attrition, people leaving,
Drop off kind of thing. Yeah.
Well, yeah, but some people leaving because the group is critical of the SNP in a sometimes a benign way, sometimes less benign. But that's the whole point. The party is supposed to be a democratic party, and if you can't speak your mind to fellow members, then what can you do?
Yeah.
So the actual objective of the Facebook group, as stated, was about trying to get the party to adopt routes to independence that did not involve Section 30.
Yes. Yes.
So we didn't feel.
Just very quickly, I see for those of you watching, I see the questions coming down, and I will certainly ask them. But they'll fit in later better. So anyway, and why are you skeptical of the Section 30 process? I mean, again, I could go on for hours about it myself.
I have stood up at CA meetings and questioned the Section 30 process and at branch meetings and what have you. Anybody in their granny knows that it's never going to work. The Westminster government is never going to grant a Section 30, and thereby, that very word "grant," grant a Section 30.
Yeah, like they granted independence to Ireland, and they granted independence to India, and Kenya.
And I think, the way that the first referendum was organised was obviously via the Section 30 of the Scotland Act, but that seems to have set a precedent, and in the sense of some of us are trapped in the Section 30 box, thinking, this is the only way for us to get independence. If we were to get independence via Section 30, I think we would be the first country in the world to get independence from a union or a bigger country.
Colonial master.
Has anyone else ever gone this route? Why is it described as the quotes? Well, as an economist, I don't like the term gold standard anyway, because it's outmoded and it failed. So calling something gold standard doesn't actually mean too much to me, not in positive terms anyway. So the whole concept of permitting the state from which you wish to separate, the whole concept of asking them for permission, it's patently foolish, especially if they don't want rid of you. Mind you, given the awful GERS figures and all the rest of it, I just wonder why they want, why the UK wants to hold on to Scotland.
Oil and nukes.
Doesn't make sense. Yes, I know. Oil and nukes and and natural energy and
fish, whiskey revenue, food and drink. There's lots of reasons actually.
Intellectual capital of the people.
Yeah,
all that stuff. We know all this, but and it just annoys me that it's it's deemed to be the default route. It's a piece of absolute stupidity.
Okay.
And
so we get so you formed the group, and then I know that we got together in our group, our Scottish Constitution. When did and it seems to me as if it was primarily you and David that came up with the idea for the manifesto for Indy. I mean, how did that come about? Was it genesis before we started having our weekly meetings? Or how did that come together?
Yeah, it was. Rewinding a little bit, we got fairly involved in the internal elections for SNP internal officials posts.
Right.
And we actually put within the group, and with the help of some people from outside the group, put together a list of kind of recommended candidates for the various posts that where there was being an election at the end of November.
Was that for the NEC primarily?
Well, for the NEC and also for, we call it the NEC, but there are a whole lot of other committees like Conference Committee and Policy Formation and all the rest of it. And well, we put out these lists of preferred. We first of all compiled lists of candidates who we were pretty sure put independence first on their agenda, and we had made a bit of a campaign promoting these candidates. Mm-hmm. So when that campaign went out to quite a lot of people, it was obviously featured on the Facebook site. We did mail outs. We probably, with hindsight, foolishly emailed all SNP councillors throughout the country, and a couple of them complained about it. And like the day before the conference, I got suspended from the party for doing this because recommending some people was deemed to be
demonstrate insufficient fealty to the party line.
Well, it could be that, but apparently it's the fastest people have ever seen the National Secretary react to anything. I think he got a complaint from somebody or other, decided that I was kind of persona non grata, and chopped my membership off at the knees right away.
They expelled you to the party for that?
I didn't get expelled. I got suspended.
Okay.
Because I'd been complained about. Now, I got suspended.
Sorry, what's the technical difference?
Suspension implies that you're not actually out of the party, but your membership is under question.
Okay.
And you then get either the National Secretary makes it permanent, or the issue gets passed to the Member Conduct Committee, and there's a process after that. But the new National Secretary took a look at it, told me that he would reply within a week, and did so. Just said there's no grounds for you being suspended. But in the meantime, I had missed conference, and I had actually been chosen to speak on a couple of issues. So it could all be coincidence, but on the other hand, it might not be. So that's the point at which David and I got together. David and I have actually never met in person knowingly. But because he was very unlucky, I think, not to get the National Secretary job. And no one's ever seen the poll results. What is this reminding us of?
And he came close, supposedly. And didn't Alex Salmon send him some kind of congratulations for doing so well?
I think he might have done. Yeah,
I think David told me that.
He might have been watching what was going on. I don't know. But yeah, that's right. Anyhow, David and I were very much of one mind on that whole thing, and then we were looking forward to, because the way the conference had been messed about.
That was the digital conference at the.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. I don't know. Actually, I wasn't able to attend.
I didn't go. I just knew it was on, but
I had. I think I had the promise from the National Secretary of a refund of the money that I had paid to go to this digital conference. I haven't seen that yet. To be fair, it might have gone to the branch, but I don't know.
Yeah.
It certainly didn't get ring fenced, put it that way. So yeah, and then the assembly in January, which was supposed to be discussing routes to independence, and for which we had put together a very early version of Manifesto for Indy. Well, that assembly was a total joke, just absolutely ridiculous piece of, I don't know, control freakery. So we kind of decided after that that we ought to produce a manifesto, because the SNP clearly wasn't going to, and it was unlikely that other parties would do so.
And what is your explanation, excuse me, for why Sturgeon is so locked into this Section 30 process? I mean, that she's made this commitment to it. It's the gold standard. It's the only way, legal way, which is not correct. But do you have any intuition as to why she seems so locked into it?
I think there's a number of I think there are a number of potential. It's just started raining really heavily here. I'm hearing the rain battering. I think there's a number of potential explanations. I've kind of asked myself this a number of times. There's a simple explanation, which is she thinks that Section 30 will be granted. You know.
And this ties in with Alison Clark's question. Does Geoff think Nicholas still wants independence? So maybe we can tie that in with your response.
You know what? I think it would be insulting almost to say that she doesn't. And I think she's been in favour of independence, you know, all of her adult and pre-adult life. That is what is particularly, that makes it particularly galling. I'm sure she does still want independence. But I think she's caught in the well, we did it this way once, we should do the same again type of syndrome. And you see, well, that is a possibility. So the other possibility is that she's not. I've heard quite a lot said about the leadership group within the SNP. They've done no preparation for independence, as far as I can make out. Also, as far as I can make out, I think they have spent the money that was ring-fenced for a referendum campaign. So they're not in a position to do either thing, either to pay the cost of running a referendum, or indeed of incurring the costs of setting up the necessary kind of machinery of government.
And that leaves completely to the side the whole idea of legislating for it, picking a date, having it go through the Electoral Commission to approve the question, getting Boris Johnson's approval. I mean, you know,
that can be done though, but there's no there's no sign of anything having been done on those matters.
Yeah.
And there's obviously there's a lot of skepticism about the party's manifesto for the upcoming election. Now, it's fair enough that it might not have been clear by this point before the election exactly what the manifesto would be. In previous elections, we don't normally release that until relatively shortly before. But there's been, as far as I can make out, no activity other than the so-called 11-point plan put together by, allegedly by Mike Russell. I think that is his plan, but it's,
It basically says we'll try to have a legal referendum. We may try to have one without approval, but we'll see. Is that kind of sum it up?
I've spoken face to face with Mike Russell. I've listened to him on numerous occasions. I have a high regard for Mike Russell. I can't believe he can be so stupid as to produce a plan like that. That is not worthy of him. So you have to question the so-called constitutional Secretary of State or whatever. Can't remember what his actual title is. For the clear absence of any concrete plan to achieve independence. What has he been doing? What has the whole party been doing? Why is there nothing? Why have we been planning for this? Now, the harsh answer to that is they don't want to go for independence.
Yeah. Okay.
That's the harsh answer. I'm not, yeah.
So that leads us to the manifesto for Indy.
Yeah.
So, so I will explain it as I understand it. You can add anything you want to it.
Okay.
So this is
Do I get to test you on it, or?
And so is it manifesto for Indy.scot? Is that correct? The website.
.com, in fact.
The manifesto for Indy y.com. Okay, right. Good. You can all go look at that. Now this is basically it's a document that we are sending to the pro-Indy political parties as well as the non-pro-Indy, the anti-Indy political parties at some point. And
we feel they should be kept informed.
Yeah, exactly. And it basically at the beginning of the document basically goes through the history of Scotland very briefly in terms of its sovereignty, and Scotland has always been a sovereign country. It has never given it up. It's been even in the 1707 Act of Union or Treaty of Union, it was maintained. It's different from Westminster sovereignty, which is the Crown and Parliament. It has never been denied. It's never been abrogated. It's even been reaffirmed through the claim of right at least 3 times over the past 30 years or so, including in 2018 when there was an act of Parliament that went through the Westminster Parliament, and they said, sure, yeah, there was no objection to reaffirming the claim of right. So as little as 3 years ago, there was an affirmation for the claim of right. Now, this gives Scotland, if the independence parties sign on to this, and we've already got, I believe, the ISP on board, and of course we're working on the others, and you can talk more about that. So if they put this incorporate into the manifesto, and so you have a common manifesto element within the parties that hopefully will subscribe to it, that they will use the sovereignty to reaffirm to affirm that the Scottish Parliament is the only parliament which has sovereignty over Scotland and the people of Scotland, and that would basically mean independence because the Scotland Act would be removed. We may run on it for a while. Scotland may run on it for a while as they make a constitutional transition. And the Westminster government will no longer be the supreme parliament over Scotland, and that's the basic gist of it.
Yeah.
And we developed you and David primarily developed an initial version, and then I had the opportunity to, because the problem of the European Union is obviously problematic, and I know that in the during the transition, after 2016, I know that the Scottish government made a lot of entreaties to the EU. We want to stay. They made a lot of effort to keep with the continuity bill, with all of these other things, to keep in the EU and kind of maintain that hope that that Scotland could re-enter the EU after Brexit. And I was saying way before that, it's like, you need to get out now. I mean, you need to get out of, and then you can probably stay in the EU. But now that it's definitively broken off after the beginning of January, it's not going to be easy to get back. And I mean, I know that, I mean, in my own view, I mean, Scotland may have a lot of goodwill, but now that they're completely out, it may not be that easy to get back in. I mean, Spain might raise some, hackles about it, and also just in the last few days, the European Parliament voted to remove the immunity of the 3 Catalan MEPs. So it's like, does Scotland really want to be in there right now? And that motivated me to contact EFTA, and I spoke with Mr. Omarsson, who is the head of communication for EFTA. Had a lovely conversation with him, and he basically said, if Scotland affirms its sovereignty in this way in May, that EFTA would be no problem to come into EFTA. It was almost like he was saying, the bath's warm, we've run a bath for you, the kettle is warm, come on in. I mean, it was really an open invitation. And they hold a monthly meeting. Once the Scottish sovereignty was affirmed, they would be able to, in their next monthly meeting, be able to consider accepting Scotland. I don't think it would be any problem. He foresaw no difficulty whatsoever. And after that, they would unify as the 3 EEA nations, which is because there's 4 nations in EFTA: Switzerland, Liechtenstein, Norway, and Iceland. And Switzerland is not a member of the EEA. The other 3 are. Switzerland they're in the common market, but it's very complicated because you have to sign a lot of bilateral agreements with the EU. It's much simpler, I think, for the EEA members. And those 3 countries, Liechtenstein, Norway, and Iceland, would unify to get at the next EEA Council to get Scotland back into the EEA. That means they're back in the Scotland will be back in the single market, back in trading on favorable terms with the rest of Europe. There's the issue. I think you looked into fisheries and agriculture, and that may be a little bit more problematic.
Only following your conversation with Mr. Omarsson.
Yeah,
I got to remember it. Yeah, with Mr. Omarsson, which I saw a recording of. You're right. It was a very, very warm conversation, and you actually pressed him for any objections that EFTA would have to Scotland's membership, and he was very clear. No. There wouldn't be any objections. It would be a very, very clear thing. And whereas membership of the EU is more, it's more, it's more complete, if you like, then the length of time it would take to join the EU, potential length of time it would take to join the EU, I would say we're looking at 4 or 5 years, something like that, easy, all being well. During which period the full ramifications of Brexit for our economy and for our civil liberties and all the rest of it, I think it's going to be pretty bad, but it's going to get worse, I'm pretty sure. Yeah. Whereas the route of getting into the EEA, which is really what we are interested in economic terms, seems really straightforward. Yeah. As long as we're able to join EFTA. And the
only precondition to joining EFTA is that Scotland affirm that it is a sovereign parliament,
Our country, yeah.
and that it has the competence to both negotiate and to sign international treaties, and the competence or the powers to enforce the treaties, the rules and provisions of whatever treaties that's
Yeah.
it. You know, they don't define a state in any more broad than that. It's just that it has a basic level of sovereignty. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So the only exceptions to the membership of EFTA and then the EEA Council via EFTA in letting us into the EEA are the areas of agriculture and fisheries, because they are not covered by the EEA agreement.
Yeah, your European Economic Area for
I know. EEA. So it would be necessary for Scotland to negotiate protocols with the EU in order to cover trade, in the agriculture and fisheries sectors. Now, how difficult is that going to be? It's going to be a lot easier than rejoining the EU. And if you think about it, I'm not sure how much trade is done of agricultural products between Scotland and the EU. But on the fisheries side, Scotland has got vast territorial waters.
Yeah,
vast territorial waters. We don't actually have the capacity in terms of fishing fleet. We don't have the capacity to exploit those to the optimum level. So there is an easy deal. I hate to say oven ready deal, but there's an easy deal to do on
straightforward. Let's not use Boris Johnson terminology.
There's an easy deal to do on the fisheries side. I'm ignorant on the agricultural side, but I know a few people who aren't. So hopefully they'll be able to help out on that front.
Okay, I want to address a couple more questions before we move on to our progress in getting the other parties to sign up for it. Okay. Why did we not join the EFTA on the 1st of January? Simply put, because the Scottish government did not think of that before, and Scotland would not have had the competence or the sovereignty asserted to both sign its own trade deals and have the powers to enforce those particular trade deals.
It would have been the ideal time to have done it.
Yes.
With that being B-Day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Do we need to include fishing in EU membership? I think that's kind of part and parcel with what we were speaking about, at least in the near term, because if Scotland did join after, there's nothing preventing them from joining the EU after, and there's, I mean, the EU members are cool, man. They say to Scotland, hey, if you want to go, join EFTA, join the EU, no problem. There will not be a it would not be an issue.
I think there's actually one point that I missed earlier, Mark, about the protocols between Scotland and the EU on fisheries and agriculture, and that is simply to say that both Norway and Iceland already have protocols on fishing with the EU. So ours it will be different because the circumstances are different. But
there's a template for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. There's a model there that can effectively describe what the relationship would need to be within that protocol. Yeah. Norway and Iceland have already done it.
Okay. While we're on the subject of fishing, should we negotiate that on fishing that EU boats pay us by tons landed anywhere? I'm not an expert enough about fishing to answer that question?
I think I understand where the question, why the question's being asked. Mm-hmm. Yes, it's clearly about EU boats using Scottish waters and with the home harbour in Samalu or somewhere in Brittany or somewhere in Spain.
Yeah.
So if it's EU boats, fishing Scottish fish and landing them elsewhere, I don't see an issue with that as long as it's agreed. My understanding is that certainly, funnily enough, I've had a look at Norway and Iceland quite a lot recently. In terms of how they
and that'll fit in right here. The most recent question: would membership of EFTA require a fishing deal with Iceland and Norway?
No,
right.
No. You wouldn't rule it out. Obviously, they'd be your trading partners. You wouldn't rule it out, but it wouldn't be necessary. There's free trade between members of EFTA. Mm-hmm. I don't know whether there are fishing deals between Iceland and Norway. I have no idea.
Yes,
I wouldn't have thought so. I wouldn't have thought they'd been necessary.
Okay, let's go back to the manifesto for Indy because David is interjecting here. But so we have this manifesto for Indy. We've developed it so that the election in May becomes basically a plebiscite, and the basic idea is that if there's parties that sign up to the manifesto for Indy, incorporate it into their manifestos, receive a majority, then they will enact it.
The government, it needs to be enacted by the government.
Yeah.
Whoever is the government.
Yeah. Okay.
They're the only people that will have power coming out of the election. Now, the government might be a single party government, but it might be a coalition.
Yeah.
But as long as they've signed up to Manifesto for Indy, they or in some way presented that within their manifesto. I mean, I don't think we're not proud about, if the SNP wanted to adopt it and claim it as their own, I don't think either David or I would be bothered about that.
Well, you're both SNP members. Why not?
Well, exactly. We'd be delighted. In fact, we'd be absolutely delighted. Mm-hmm. And I think really the benefits to the SNP of adopting this, along with the other independent supporting parties, are absolutely obvious. We've been rambling on about disunity within the Yes movement for the last year, say.
Yeah,
it would be a fantastic way of uniting the Yes movement behind common cause of early independence and undoing the damage of Brexit. Mm-hmm. Nicola could go down in history in the right way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Let me see. And then David Henry, just to be clear, while I have been publicly promoting and presenting Manifesto for Indy, it reflects a group of opinions and expertise. Yes, it does. We have drawn in numerous expert opinions in international law, especially through David Younger, of EFTA, through myself, who had a conversation with an official and with Mr. Omarsson that I spoke to with EFTA. He would not have said that, told me what he told me in the most positive terms if he did not know that was the case. I can absolutely assure that. So were Scotland to affirm its independence through this mechanism in May, then there's no question that EFTA would.
I think also the depth of constitutional expertise, Scottish constitutional expertise within the group, has been a massive asset as well. Just the depth of knowledge amongst the
yes, because I've developed wiki.scottishconstitution.com. Robert Ingram, they have Constitution for Scotland.scot. We're working to unify these texts and to present a unified document that can be used, on day one, basically, and spend, after May, to spend the next year or so, maybe 18 months, maybe 2 years, developing the Scottish state, refining the Constitution, getting genuine popular input, because in our view, it really needs to be a document of the people and not the oligarchs. In the United States, the Constitution was written by oligarchs, and oligarchs still rule. If there's anything that we want, if there's any objective that I've had since I became involved in that, it was that it would be genuinely a Constitution that served the popular interest and served the popular will. There has to be a solid Stephen. There has to be a solid manifesto pledge all into parties for a referendum. Well, not for a referendum, because this would avoid a referendum. And we were joking earlier about sending it to the opposition party, saying this completely comports with you say you don't want a referendum. There won't be a referendum. No divisive referendum. It's just a straight on vote, for the parties that can.
Let me just add a little bit to that actually I think is quite a good answer to what is a good question, and that is that once the election in May enables the country to declare itself a sovereign independent state, the very idea, if I had voted for that, and then somebody had said, well, now we're going to run a referendum to ask if you want to be independent, my reaction would be, why are you asking me that again? I've already answered that question. Go away. We are already independent. We don't need a referendum.
Yes. In a question directed towards me regarding the Constitution that I submitted to the Scottish government, including Mike Russell, yes, they do have it. I've also spoken with our colleagues at both at the Constitutional Commission with John Drummond, and also with Scotland, Constitution for Scotland. We have all submitted our ideas to the Scottish government, and we've all basically gotten the same result. We put it in they put it in their drawer, and that's about it. They don't act upon it. They're not as you said, they're not planning for it, for independence. And even to the point where when we were suggesting, when I was sending documents to the different MSPs and MPs in Holyrood, there was genuine annoyance on the part of Mr. Russell, saying, I heard through the grapevine that he was very annoyed that we were doing that. And so I was like, okay, all right, you don't want to plan, okay, fine. We're just trying to help you out here, but okay, fine.
He's not doing that job. Somebody has to do it.
Yeah.
It's all a bit dog in the manger-ish, isn't it? Mm-hmm. I know I should be doing it, but I'm not doing it, but you can't do it either. Yeah.
Exactly. So just going through the questions. What do you think about making the election in May a plebiscite? I think we've answered that, because that's what we're seeking to do through the manifesto.
I don't like the word plebiscite, to be honest. I think it's a bit of it's a difficult word to explain.
Yeah.
You make it. This is an election about declaring our country a sovereign state.
Yeah.
And is the way that, anyway, plebiscite's a bit patrician, actually. I made a joke. Did you get it?
If the SNP don't get a majority in the May elections, what do you see next? Well, I think as David Henry was explaining, we don't want the SNP to necessarily have a majority, but that there be a coalition of parties which have adopted and incorporated the manifesto for Indy into their so that whatever government is formed can go ahead with implementing the manifesto and independence. So
I don't mind the SNP having a majority. Mm-hmm. especially if they have adopted this. That's fine.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay. I think I've gotten through all the questions. So how do you, let's see. And can you comment, a couple more questions.
I've just seen a question. I've just seen a question there for you, Mark.
Yeah, we need you back in independent Scotland, mate. Thanks, Stephen. You know, if I have to do it from remotely from France, I'll be there no matter what. So thank you very much. I appreciate that. So
checks in the post, Stephen.
So let's see. I think we should finish off by what do you think are the realistic prospects? I mean, I know you and David are you have a lot of good connections to the SNP. You know the right people. You've been in communication with not only the SNP but the ISP and a party that may emerge sometime next week. How do you see it realistically?
Okay, I think I am getting more optimistic. When we first started out on this, I think we both agreed that actually nobody has a plan. Nobody has a plan. So there's a vacuum here. Let's put together a plan that anybody who wants can adopt. Now we've talked with all the parties. I think it's possible that the SNP will adopt it. I think particularly if the poll ratings start moving in the wrong direction and various other things happen, then it should be more, they should regard it more as an opportunity.
And what's the time frame for that? By when do they need to have, what's the kind of the latest date that they need to put together their manifesto?
I think releasing it, well, I'm not sure, to be honest.
Probably like maybe early April, I guess. I mean,
early to mid-April, I think.
Yeah. So they got a month.
I don't think there's any regulation whereby they absolutely have to release by then. But I think I started off thinking we'd maybe a 5% chance of getting this adopted, widely adopted. But even then, even at that level, the prize was so high. The prize was such a big prize that we had to do it anyway. I think as time has gone on, so that's like back in a 100-to-1 shot in a horse race.
Yeah.
I'm going to invest £10 in that, and most of the time you won't win anything. But when you do win, it's quite good.
Yeah.
You get money. You get money to put another bet on. But I think my assessment of it, straight off the top of my head, would be way higher than that now. We're getting good traction. We haven't had any other parties definitely adopt it. We are in dialogue with the Yes movement, all aspects of the Yes movement. And if you think about it from their perspective, they lack a kind of unified policy as well. You can have the objective, as the Yes movement does, of independence, but you can't campaign on independence. It's too kind of ephemeral a concept. You need a call to action, you need a plan, you need a call to action. And that's what the Manifesto for Indy does. It gives something that no one really in the Yes, do you see anybody in the Yes movement objecting to this plan?
I sure haven't, yeah.
I think it's no, and particularly if you look at the policy of now Scotland, then they're not just looking for the policy actually states they're looking for independence for the country as quickly as it can be obtained.
Yes.
This is probably, that probably says, well, when is the next democratic event at which independence could be obtained? And that's the 6th of May.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, just very quickly, any constitution must also have input from those who opposed independence. I agree with that. And I would hope that if this is achieved, that I think that having watched the Salmond, and Sturgeon questions and these things, I see people like Murdo Fraser as capable people that could that could contribute to this. So, I certainly want to have the good ideas, I envision for a Scottish constitution to have all the good ideas possible. And so, of course, because I think, even in people who oppose independence, they can see what the dysfunction of both the Scottish government and the UK government. It's not like they necessarily wedded so much to it, and a lot of them would have good ideas about it. So of course, we would want to take all that on board as a Scottish constitution is developed. Okay, anything you want to finish off with, Geoff?
Not really, Mark. I think we've been through this. I think there's only one thing to say, really. That is Manifesto for Independence. Read it, share it, vote for it.
Exactly. And we will continue to try to get the other parties on board. We have good contacts. We've good positive reactions, nothing negative. And the same for EFTA. Where if Scotland votes to declare their sovereignty in May, then there's little doubt that EFTA would welcome us and help us get back into the EEA within a question of maybe just a very few months, whereas waiting for a Section 30 order, reapplying to the EU, that could take a decade. Who knows? We just don't. Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. I'll go ahead and end it, Kev.